So I want to say good morning. It's the morning time now. Normally I record in the evening, but to for Alicia, my special guest today, we're doing morning time because she's a busy mom with many goats and dogs and trying to get her to get a couple llamas, but she won't do that. And so Alicia, welcome to my little podcast interview. And Alicia, would you introduce yourself?
So I'm Alicia Witt, as Matt said, and I write a blog at For His Purpose blog. Um, and yeah, I have children, I have kids. So I have human kids and I have goat kids, and I'm
Okay.
not going to get llamas anytime soon.
But those llamas would protect the kids from the wolves and coyotes.
Yeah,
Uh,
probably. Yeah,
yeah,
and we have a lot of coyotes. We hear them a
yeah.
lot.
Well, you live out there where the deer and the antelope play, right?
Yeah.
She's out in west part of my state, and Alicia, one thing I always got a kick out of was the one time that you and your family came to Lincoln. And
Yeah.
of all the restaurants we have in Lincoln, I mean, we have ethnic restaurants, we have fine dining restaurants, and the place that you're excited to go to is Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was kind of interesting.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, 'cause, okay, that's the closest one to us, or in Denver, which equally Lincoln or Denver, 4 hours away, either way.
okay.
But we are, yeah, that's my blog. Yeah, but we
Yeah.
are getting a Chick-fil-A just an hour north of us, so we might have
Wow.
some. Yeah, I know. So we're gonna be really living big.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, Alicia has a blog called For His Purpose. It's forhispurpose.blog. And Alicia will share about life and with her family. She'll share about her craft project. She's very uh, artistic like that and things like that. So check out her blog at for his purpose.blog. And
Yeah.
Alicia, I'm very happy you joined me today. And the other thing I remember is the first time I met you in person, and I met with you and your friend
Yeah.
at Panera Bread, and I was sitting there waiting, and in came in these two women, and one looked like she's like maybe not quite 5 feet tall,
That's right.
and but she might be small in stature, physically, but mighty in spirit.
Yeah.
So that's how I put it, and
Thanks.
so yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Alicia, yes,
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say in my introduction, I haven't talked about my husband yet. So, yes, I am
yes.
married, and my husband is amazing and loves the Lord just as much as I do. So, and
Yeah.
loves the Lord more than me, which is important. So,
And what work does your husband do?
and he works in the oil field.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So he's outside a lot.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
and you have three children?
3 children. Yep.
Oh,
Teenagers. They're all
yeah.
teenagers now.
Oh
So,
gosh. Okay, so Alicia needs our prayers. She has three teenagers.
yeah. They're good. They're headed in the right direction.
That's
So,
good.
good.
That's what's
Yeah.
important. That's what's important. So,
Yeah.
Alicia, would you like to share a little bit of your testimony?
Sure. I can share the whole thing.
Good.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I'm excited to do this. It's funny because I used to kind of get a little fearful in speaking about my testimony and just the things that I've gone through. But the more you practice, the better it gets. And it's so important to share a testimony anyways. We should be excited to share our
Mhm.
story and then ultimately what Jesus is doing through us and then just pointing to him through that. So anyways, yeah, growing up, I had a lot of childhood trauma. I was the oldest of 3 kids, and my mom and dad were very loving, but my mom had epilepsy, and my dad had substance abuse, marijuana, drinking, very loving towards one another, very loving to us, but my dad just really wrestled with those things. When I was probably 7 or so, there was a homicide that happened in front of our home in California. And I just remember having a lot of fear over my mom's epilepsy, and then a lot more added fear with that homicide. And nobody ever talked to me about it. And so I just kind of internalized it and didn't realize it, but I was definitely laying tracks of fear from a very young age. Um, I believe that around that time, I was inappropriately touched by a boy that was about my age, and I just kept it to myself. I didn't share it with my parents or anything like that. And so, again, more fear snuck in, and I had no idea that perfect love drives out fear. I had no idea that that Jesus existed at the time, and so our family ended up moving to Nebraska to be with my dad's family because my dad was originally from Nebraska. And there I got acquainted with my paternal grandparents, and my grandma was very strong in her faith. She would um, share Jesus with me, introduce me to Sunday school. We went to church with her, but it was very hit and miss. And my dad didn't ever go with us. My mom couldn't drive because of the epilepsy, but my dad made sure that he got us there. He would give us rides there, and then after church, like I said, it was very hit and miss. But after church, we would generally meet back up at my grandma's and have a meal there. And I finally felt like I could get comfortable with life, but I was blindsided by more inappropriate touch by family and friends. I think by the time that I was preteen, I was probably inappropriately touched by a dozen or so individuals,
Mm.
and this made me very vulnerable. I was quite a people pleaser. And when I finally told my parents about it, I was probably 12 or 13. And they were pretty upset about my perpetrators, and their anger kind of outweighed the need to comfort their daughter. And so the whole thing was handled very shallowly. And it's not that they didn't care, it's just that they were ill equipped, and mental health and counseling, therapy, those kind of things weren't as common as they are now as part of therapy or overcoming. And so, anyways, I became even more of a people pleaser. I knew that I was quite different from my friends. I wanted to fit in with them, and so I noticed that they just seemed a lot more interesting than me. And as a result, I started doing the things that they were doing, drinking, partying, inappropriate relationships. I just wanted to fit in with my peers. And in the meantime, my dad ended up cleaning up his act, and he started coming to church with us, very hit and miss. My mom always says that our church attendance was very much like go to church on a Sunday morning, leave Jesus there, do life without him through the week. And knowing what I do now, yeah, that was very spot on. And so my dad, he had cleaned up his act. He started racing dirt bikes, which is something that he did as a teenager. And he got my little brothers involved with it as well. I think they were maybe 8 and 9 or so when they started doing that. And I was pretty jealous. I liked to be the center of attention, and with dirt bike racing, I wasn't. And so I just remember really having feelings of jealousy through that. And anyway, so I continued in my negative ways. A couple years into the dirt bike racing, my dad ended up hitting a double jump wrong and landed on his neck. It left him paralyzed from the neck down, so he's quadriplegic and ventilator dependent. And I still continued down my negative path. My dad lived there in Lincoln at Madonna at the rehab center,
Mm.
and we would go visit him from time to time. And I think I was about 16 when this happened. And so then, fast forward a little bit, the summer before my senior year, we had brought my dad home to visit. So, other side of the state, 4 hours away. And we actually had plans to move there to Lincoln. We were going to build a house. Just the care there in Lincoln is just a little more easily accessible than it is back here. And so, anyways, we were going to move there, but we would bring him home to visit every once in a while. We brought him home that summer before my senior year. He actually wasn't even supposed to come home, but he had a falling out with some of the nursing staff, and so my sweet mom came to his rescue and brought him home over the 4th of July. This would have been back in 2001. and he had an amazing time catching up with family and friends. And I was pretty absent for most of it. I thought that the party scene couldn't happen without me. And so I spent a lot of my time doing that rather than spending time with my family. And on July 8th of 2001, my dad told my mom that morning, "I'm so thankful that you're the one taking care of me this morning, but I do not like living like this anymore."
Mm.
And little did we know, it would be the last time that she would have to care for him in that way. We left later that afternoon and headed back to Lincoln to take him back to his care facility. And I fell asleep behind the wheel, and my dad did not survive the car accident.
Oh,
And you would think that the magnitude of that would have caused me to change my ways, but instead I received a lot of attention and continued down the negative path that I was pretty familiar with. So, um, yeah, and then my husband and I, we went to high school together, and we had kind of dated off and on. We were definitely not what you would call high school sweethearts. And I think that the thing that we probably had most in common was partying.
mhm.
He probably knew of church as a place where weddings and funerals took place, and that was about the extent of it. We married fairly young, and still had an interest in partying. And the final straw for me was, we had gone to a bar one evening, and there was an after bar party that we were invited to. And so we were going to go to that. Well, I decided I was going to ride with a gal that I had worked with previously. She kind of had a problem with me, and I wanted to buddy up with her because I still had this people pleasing issue. And so I rode to the after bar party with her. And when I got there, my husband wasn't there. He was nowhere to be found. And I was getting pretty sleepy and felt very uncomfortable because I realized I was with a bunch of people that I did not know. And so when my ride was leaving, I made sure to gather my things and myself, and I got a ride with her. And I had called my husband and found out that he had ended up at a different after bar party. So alcohol, poor communication. But anyways, I was reunited with him, and the next morning, I just remember waking up and reflecting on the previous night, and I thought, "Wow, Alicia, like, what are you doing?" It was pretty scary to me because I had partied before, I had drank before, but I was always with friends. I was always with people that I knew would look out for me, and here I had been with people that I really didn't know, and it scared me. So over the next 5 years, I didn't touch alcohol. I didn't, I just, I was kind of a shell. I just kind of clammed up, and I felt very insecure.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, my husband had turned into an alcoholic and was quite the social butterfly. We had our three children by that point into those 5 years. And it would have been in 2012, towards the end of 2012, I realized that so 5 years had gone by since that party. And I wasn't pursuing the Lord. My mom was pointing me to Jesus all the time, but I wasn't pursuing the Lord. Just morally, I was making good choices. I just didn't have a faith behind those moral choices. And so, anyways, I remember crying out to my mom and saying, "What is going on? Like, there has got to be something more to life." My marriage was kind of falling apart because Nathan and I didn't have things in common by this point. And so my mom, like I said, she had really grown in her faith since my dad's death. And so she'd point me to Jesus every time. And finally, in January of 2013, I ended up going to a church service with my mom. My little kids were right beside me. And I just remember being kind of a mess when I went in there. But there happened to be a woman that was preaching that day. And I know there's some controversy over that, women preaching, but I know that God can use anyone at any place. And God used this woman in my life. And I remember her quoting Philippians 4:13, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And it was what she said, she followed up with, and she said, "All of you should be very familiar with that verse." And I thought, man, as many times as I've sat in the church pews, that verse was very unfamiliar to me. But it was the push that I needed, and it changed my life. I went home, and I still mess, but I knew that in order to overcome what I was experiencing, I needed Christ's strength within me.
Mhm.
And so, and meanwhile, like I said, my husband really had an alcohol problem. And so, we were really growing apart at this point, but the kids and I would hit our knees every single night, praying for their dad to come to faith. I was digging into the word, highlighting, just reading like crazy, really growing in my faith. Realized that I truly needed to give my life to the Lord. Yes, I
Hmm.
believed in him. I knew that this awesome world wasn't just created by mere chance. I knew that there had to be an awesome creator. So I never struggled with my belief in God. It wasn't that,
Hmm.
is that I just didn't know the relationship that's required with Jesus.
Hmm.
And so I gave my life to Christ, and my husband would call me a Bible beater and a Jesus freak, and he would tell me I was as crazy as my
Uh-huh.
mom, which is probably true and still true. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so, anyways, this went on for about 8 months. So, and then I remember pressing into 1 Corinthians 7, instructs that Christians stay with the unbelieving spouse in the hopes that they might turn them towards the Lord for his glory. And so I really pressed into that. And I also remember, this is kind of funny looking back. At the time, it wasn't funny, but looking back, I remember there's also scripture that talks about going into your closet to pray. And so I would do that. I would sneak into my closet and I would pray for my husband to come to faith. And I
Okay.
thought, man, if he ever opens the door and finds me behind this closet on my knees, crying and a mess and talking, he's going to think that I'm crazier than he already does think. But anyways, I did that. I did that very faithfully. And I was only ever caught by Jesus. And in August of 2013, Nathan went in for a routine checkup at the doctor's office and came back that he had diabetes. And so he
Oh.
completely gave up alcohol, completely, just, I mean, in a snap. And, uh, and he started coming to church with us, and he just soaked in scripture and accepted Jesus as Lord over his life. And it's just been so awesome because alcoholism affected the generations before us. There was a generational curse of alcoholism in our family.
Hmm.
And now to see that broken and to see my husband and I and the kids pursuing faith in the Lord is just amazing. And so, yeah, anyways, there was a verse that really spoke to me in the early stages of my faith, from 3 John 1:4. And it says, I have no greater joy than to hear my children walking in the truth. And
Oh.
that verse just meant so much to me, and it still does. And I just love that we're witnessing our family grow in the Lord together. And 1 Peter 3:15, that's another one that means so much, because we need to be ready to give a reason for the hope in us.
Hmm.
And we need to be prepared and excited to share our story so that people can see. To see what Jesus has done and transformed in our lives, and ultimately to see the gospel message.
Hmm.
So, and to point to him. So, yeah,
Oh. Oh.
yeah, yeah.
Good. Wow. That I knew some of your testimony, and that was I'm so happy that you came to know Christ, and that
Yeah.
and your husband too, and you have a beautiful family. I've met your kids.
Mhm.
Um, the my father was an alcoholic, and he went to AA, and I remember in reading in what's called the Big Book that the bottles were symptoms. Like, in other words, like the thing that the idea is that the alcoholism was a symptom of something going on inside.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
um I think that like, I know that I partied as a teenager, drank a lot in my early 20s, and that was really more of a symptom
Mhm.
because of the trauma I went through as a kid.
Right, right.
And um so, if you don't mind, I know that you've shared in your blog about getting some therapy.
Mhm.
How is that helpful for you?
Yeah. So, oh my goodness, therapy. Yeah. So a lot of my childhood and teenage years, I kind of just brushed under the rug. In fact, when Nathan and I got back together, well, it would have been his senior year, and I was already graduated. I'm a year and a half older. And so when we
But
got back together, I thought, okay, and obviously I wasn't pursuing Christ at this time, but
Hmm.
morally I thought, okay, I'm going to do better. I'm not, I mean, and we still had the interest of drinking and partying and things like that, but I should back up just a minute. In my teen years, our relationship, like I said, was very off and on, and I was not committed in my relationships because all I ever knew was men, guys coming in and out of my life. And so
Hmm.
I didn't know the importance of being committed in a relationship. And so it was really neat because even though I wasn't pursuing Christ, he was already working on me. And so when Nathan and I got back together that very last time as it still as young teenagers, I mean, I was maybe 19 and he was 18 or so. But anyways, I knew something was laid on my heart and I knew that it was very important to be committed in this relationship.
Hmm.
But I also didn't want to talk about my stuff before. I just thought, Alicia, be committed and do good in the future. And I did. And, and that's what I stuck to. And so,
Hmm.
anyways, okay, so fast forward now to it would have been, let's see, well, COVID happened in 2020. And I remember serious fear one time. I laid down for bed. It was in March of 2020. And I thought, oh my goodness, what is this virus all about? When is it going to affect my family or the people in my community? What's it going to do? And I remember laying down to go to sleep, and there was just this rush of peace that
Hmm.
overwhelmed me, and it was just amazing. And I slept like a baby that night. And then 6 months later, I ended up with a lump that I found in my kind of in the pocket area of my armpit. And I knew something wasn't right. And so I went in for a doctor's appointment. And of course, they had concern and they wanted me to go in for a mammogram. And so I did that. And of course, it came back that something was off. And so then they wanted to schedule a biopsy. And during this, I had this great amount of fear again. And I thought, what in the world? Where'd that gentle peace go that I had from 6 months before? But I don't know. I just let Satan weasel in there, I guess. And so I got the biopsy results back, and it came back that I had breast cancer at
Hmm.
stage 1. And so I remember after finding out that it was cancer, I thought, okay, because I really dealt with fear of the unknown in that time, in that 2 week period, and my trust really faltered. But after I found out what it was, I released it to the Lord because I didn't have another choice. And so, anyways, and he hushed my fear once again. But I had the surgery and all that, and everything was cleared up. I met amazing nurses and doctors through that. But then I ended up getting COVID about a month after the surgery. And so I had to be stuck in my room. And anyways, it was over Thanksgiving, and I was tucked away in my room, away from my family. And Thanksgiving is supposed to be about, feasting and fellowship, and being tucked away
Yes.
in your room over Thanksgiving is not normal. And I started doing a lot of reflecting and really thinking about how important my family was to me. And I don't know, I just something came over me where I was isolated and Satan snuck into that room, and I don't know, it just began this mental battle. I started questioning if I had been spending enough time with my kids, and I realized like how much of my motherhood was spent on keeping busy cleaning the house and things like that, and always kind of being distracted. And I think it's because I was always trying to push away that childhood trauma, but suddenly I was just flooded with that, and with regret and shame, and it was really an ugly time. And anyways, I realized that I needed to get therapy, and so I reached out to a friend who I go to church with, and who's um, also probably one of the most gifted therapists that I've ever met. And I started meeting with her professionally, and poured out everything. I laid it all out. And oh my goodness, she had so much love and respect,
Hmm.
and just echoed Jesus through everything that I poured out. Everything that I talked about had this series of narration behind it. And so all of my emotions that I felt. Now suddenly I was understanding why I had felt some of those emotions. And then within that, I began to share things with my husband. I needed to.
Hmm.
And he met me with so much mercy and grace. I had confessed to him that in our teen years, I hadn't been committed, and that was something that I hadn't ever talked about. And he said, Alicia, I'm so thankful that you told me about this now that I'm a Christian. He said, if you'd have told me that maybe back in our teen years or in our early 20s or in our early marriage, he just said, I might have walked away. He said, but now I know the compassion that Jesus has. And so he was just so merciful and gracious. And, therapy brought a lot of tears, and he would let me cry into the midnight hours. And then he'd have to go to work the next day. And he would text me, encouraging messages and different
Mm.
quotes and different Bible verses, and just poured into me. And so, yeah, mental health is a real thing, and it needs addressed, and people need to seek therapy. And just the combination of the tools that Jesus blessed me with through my family and through my therapist has made all the difference.
Mm.
So sorry, that was kind of long, but
No, that's great. That's great. One of the things that my pastor said that stuck with me from a few years ago, he said, put it this way, that Jesus wants to partner with us
mhm,
in that journey. And
yeah.
you know, I think about also, I mean, I went through trauma as a kid, and so that's why I wrote my book, Jesus Understands Trauma, because he went through a lot of things
Mhm.
when he lived on Earth.
Right.
Um, he was um, family problems. I mean, all kinds of things. I listed in my book, but it's like the fact that he endured those things when he didn't have to.
Right.
He went through
Right.
that. He went through those things, including being physically assaulted,
Right.
tortured, and so and one thing that I think we don't stop thinking about is that when the Romans crucified people, the movies always show Jesus with like a loincloth on. That's not what the Romans did. So when they
Mhm.
crucified people, they were completely naked. And so
Right.
when Jesus was assaulted, that was the condition he was in. And so it's like he kind of has that understanding for
Right.
us, having
Right.
been through so much. And that's why in Hebrews it says that he's our sympathetic high priest,
Hmm. Right.
able to sympathize with us in our weaknesses, and that we can approach his throne to find grace and mercy in our time of need. And uh, so I think that going through that journey of healing from
Hmm.
past trauma is so worth it. And
Right.
I remember the woman that I met with, I went through therapy, said, I'll never forget what she told me. She said, Matt, people who went through what you went through growing up become alcoholics, drug addicts, in prison or dead, but you didn't. You're a
Right.
victor. Why is
Yeah.
that? And I just said, Jesus,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so so I rejoice that you um, first of all, most importantly, that you know Jesus, making my little sister in Jesus because you're younger, not
Yeah.
not just that you're small, but that you're younger. And so, and I know that you have a really good church that you go to there out in the wilderness.
I do.
And
Yeah.
I met one of your friends, which is really cool when you
Yeah.
came here. And
Hmm.
and your family is a really fun family. I remember back when you joined Blogger Chat during COVID, and your daughter Paige would join us, and
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
I always enjoy telling her jokes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And now she's off at college and
yeah,
doing that
wow.
whole thing. So
So
yeah.
I'm going to say one joke in case she watches this, and then
Okay.
just this for Paige. Do you know what you call an old snowman? Water. So in case Paige watches, or you can tell her that and
Okay.
take credit
Oh
for that.
yeah.
So so
Funny.
when you blog, when you write your blog, what do you draw inspiration from?
Yeah.
What inspires you to blog or write your
Yeah,
blog posts?
that's a good question. So it actually is two different things. Sometimes I'll be reading through my Bible and I'll come across a verse that really
Okay.
stands out to me or that God really impresses on my heart. And then I'll just start maybe seeing, obviously, that needs to point to Jesus first and foremost, but I'll
Yes.
see what Jesus is teaching me through that verse. And then I'll notice like the life lessons that I'm learning through that
Uh-huh.
verse. But other times it's that I'm going through something and whether it's good or bad, and then verses are just coming to mind that fit right in with whatever scenario it is that I'm dealing with. And then I just always like to share those things, like those life lessons and those verses,
Yeah.
whether it happens one way or another. But um, anyways, yeah, writing is something that I even enjoyed as a teenager, but I didn't know that it was something that I was gifted with at the time. And so I would write a lot for English assignments and, in high school and in a little bit of my college years. And then there was this very long gap, um, well, probably from my early 20s to my late 20s, because I became a Christian, a true Christian in my late 20s. And so that long gap I didn't write, but I remember then probably like mid 30s, I really started writing and started the blog and that kind of thing. And I went back and looked at some of my old pieces that I had written back in my teen years. And I was amazed that the writing style is very similar. It's just that
Mhm.
now it includes Jesus.
Okay. All right.
So,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah. In your blog, I've also noticed like you'll share about the animals, the goats,
Oh, yeah.
art,
Yeah.
you'll share like some of your craft projects and things like
Yeah.
that, which I have no ability for crafts. That's just I am artistically challenged. Uh, so that's putting it nicely.
I do
Uh,
write, and that's creative.
yeah, well, thank
And
you.
that was something that my therapist really said too. There's a couple things. I mean, well, she said a lot, but I mean, we met for 2.5 years. So yeah, she
Okay.
said a lot. But one of the things was that she really encouraged me to be creative, your
Uh-huh.
mind, otherwise Satan wants to weasel in there, and so she encouraged to really be creative and then admire the things that I create. And
Mm,
obviously God gives us those talents. And so just the thankfulness, the gratitude in that. Also, I want to piggyback on, I could have said this earlier, but one of the things is, when I was really in that deep depressive state and, the lies would come, that kind of thing. My therapist would remind me that guilt is when we are doing a wrong action, when we are in the midst of doing a wrong action. But shame is always from Satan. So we might be far removed from whatever it was that was going on that maybe wasn't okay. And then we might get years from that. And then Satan might try and take that situation from years ago and hold it over us. And that's shame. And shame is always from Satan. And so she really encouraged me to flood with truth. That was her words
wow.
probably every week. Flood with truth. And so flooding with truth looks like being in the word, worship music, having Christian brothers and sisters to fellowship with and to hold one another accountable. And so,
Hmm.
anyways, yeah. And so I've shared some of that on the blog and yeah,
I love that too, because like shame is something that really is uh, something that people really can really struggle with who have been through, especially childhood trauma or
yeah,
have been assaulted or anything like that, is feeling that sense of shame that it's not ours.
yeah,
I remember coming to that realization, like what I went through as a kid, that shame does not belong to me. And
right,
even that guilt does not belong to me.
right.
It belongs to my parents. And
Mm.
and so if I'm feeling shame about that or even guilt about that, it's not for me. And it's like Jesus frees us from that.
Right.
He can free us from shame, and even also free us from the guilt. And
Yeah.
so whether it's like something we did wrong or
Right.
something that was done to us,
Mhm.
Jesus can free us from that.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, and uh so shame is not something that belongs to us.
No.
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 And especially if somebody's a victim of any kind of abuse, any kind of like um assault, that shame does not belong to the victim,
Right.
and
Right.
even the guilt does not belong to the victim.
Right.
But
Well, and something people really struggle with within that is forgiveness. Then, people
yeah.
get caught up in this forgiveness. And the thing is that um having frustration over something, man, that takes a lot of work. I mean, it
Hmm.
really debilitates us because we're working so hard at holding this grudge, and grudges
Hmm.
are so much work. But my counselor made sure to tell me that sometimes we won't get an apology from the guilty offender when we're wrong. And but just to know that validity still ushers forth through Jesus and through what he has done on the cross and his
Hmm.
resurrection. And so um yes, we just have to push into that sometimes, because
Yeah.
sometimes our wrongs aren't going to be made right by someone asking us to forgive them. And so, anyways,
Yeah.
mercy is something that I'm very passionate about, and I do not have any grudge against anyone who did anything against me, because I know that in my own life I have sinned time and time again, and I've needed that mercy and grace, whether it's
Hmm.
from somebody else or just seeking forgiveness in
Yeah.
God.
And I
So,
think in that forgiveness is something that we might need Jesus to help us with. If we've
right,
been deeply wounded, he can help us with that forgiveness. And sometimes it's, forgiveness releases that person from us, and put them into God's hands and pray for
right,
those people. And there are times also that I think it's important to remember forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation.
mm-hmm.
And so there may be times in some scenarios or situations for people, if they have been deeply hurt, that if the person has not shown any regret, any repentance, any willingness to change, that trying to reconcile the relationship is going to do further harm. But still, that forgiveness frees us up.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, like, with my parents, my father showed regret,
Sure,
and so that made reconciliation possible.
right,
um Whereas my mother never showed any regret. It's always a bad, bad, you're bad, 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 I'm good, like that. And so we couldn't really have true reconciliation of that relationship.
mm,
um but I still had that forgiveness and would still pray for her, pray for my father, things like that. So forgiveness freed me up. It gave me freedom. And
right,
because I remember, like, it's in Hebrews says, be careful not to let a root of bitterness,
mm-hmm.
eh, be careful of that,
Right,
so it doesn't cause problems later. And
right,
so it's like, I think the world would want us to think, don't forgive at all,
right,
but it's through forgiveness that I was freed.
right.
Yeah.
Well, right. And every time that we hold on to a grudge or something like that, we really risk then getting angry at um, things outside of that situation, but then also at God too. And
Yeah.
so it's so important to make sure that we're right with God. We might be frustrated about something, but we need
Yeah.
to still echo his love and mercy. And it's not that we forgive and forget about what happened. We need to be wise, but
Yes.
also just not harbor that unforgiveness in our heart, because it makes us so ugly to the world that's watching.
Yes. Yeah. Because bitter, ugly, yeah, resentful, almost like waiting for the next grudge, things
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I
Yeah.
talk about that. I have a book that I'm writing, and hopefully it'll get published here this year. But I talk a lot about that. Well, I mean, and it's my memoir, and so it's talking about my whole story, and just the different emotions and things like that, in a more in depth than what I've explained here. And so, but anyways, yeah, I talk a lot about that. So,
Mm. Mm.
forgiveness, and yeah.
Yeah. So
So,
what verses have been speaking to you recently? What Bible verses?
oh my goodness. That's a good question. I recently, a best friend of mine just lost her father. And
Oh,
so I've been sending her a lot of encouraging verses, but you just put me on the spot. And so I don't know, just yeah, anything that's encouraging, I've just been going through and
hmm.
finding verses to send to her and encourage her in that. So yeah,
Okay.
that's been really important and near and dear to my heart. So
Okay. All right. And
yeah.
um, what you feel like? What do you feel like the Lord's showing you in your about life at this time?
Um Oh goodness, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm constantly looking at him, but it's interesting because even just last night, one of my kiddos ended up getting sick, and to the point that this child literally fainted in my arms.
Oh,
Scared me. Yeah, I just shared my story. I've dealt with a lot of trauma, but this situation last night, um, was really heavy because she
mm,
literally had fainted in my arms, not just for that, but just because that fear just began to kind of muster up in just a split second. And um, I was hollering for my husband. It was kind of late at night, and I just had this panic in me. And so my husband came in and took over, and I stepped back and I was like, Lord, just be over this situation. But I also then I reflected on it since, I mean, and this is just fresh. And I thought, man, my faith wavers so quick. And so
hmm.
that's something that, boy, yeah, it's always a work in progress, you know, and I feel like we're always becoming. We're never, you know, we're not going to arrive to our fullness until we're on the other side of earth, you know, in
Uh,
heaven. And so sanctification is very
yeah.
important to me, just remembering that we're going to mess up, but um, we
How
need to
about?
pursue the Lord no
I'll,
matter what.
I think I'm going to cut you a lot of slack on that one though, because for mother, there's probably nothing scarier than for her child to
Oh my
pass out in their
goodness.
arms.
Yeah, well, and just a thousand things went through my mind in just a short
Yeah.
amount of time. And you know, like I said, I dealt with the fear of my mom having epilepsy. And when my kid was looking at me and had this blank stare, I literally thought my child was getting ready to have a seizure. And I thought, what in the world? You know, we've made it into,
Yeah.
my mom had epilepsy starting when she was probably 11 or 12. Her body developed too quick, and that's why she had the epilepsy. And that was always kind of a fear of mine with my own kids. I didn't want that to be something that, you know, I didn't know if it was something that was hereditary. And we got kind of into these later teen years, and I thought, yes, we got through that. We're not going to deal with seizures. But last night, boy, that's where my thoughts went. Or when she became completely unresponsive, I thought, oh my gosh, like my thoughts went to worst case scenario. And
Yes.
so I still have so much work to do, you know, in my faith and trusting Jesus. And so
Yeah. And is your daughter okay now?
she is just fine now. She has a fever and
Oh,
she's
okay.
resting on the couch. And so,
Does
but
she have the flu or something?
I don't know. I mean, she's the one that has the celiac disease, and so
Oh,
her health is always kind of, you
yeah.
know. So just
Yeah.
last week, she tested out some no bake cookies that were supposed to be gluten free at youth group on a Wednesday night, and her youth group leader said, "Are you sure that's going to be okay?" And my daughter said, "Oh, I'll find out in a couple hours." Sure enough, a couple hours later, she ended up getting sick. I think she
Oh
threw up probably
no.
5 times. And so, anyways, just the immune system is a little bit compromised. And so
Yeah.
always kind of, but last night, boy, never been more terrified in my life in a split
Oh,
second.
well, I
So
can understand. I think anybody who watched this video and listened would totally understand.
yeah,
For mother to have their child go through that right in front of you I imagine there's probably nothing scarier,
yeah,
than
yeah.
that. And I could certainly understand that. I relate with your daughter because I have celiacs, and
Mm,
so and after I found out, it was like a whole education.
Yes.
Even like just because a box says something gluten free, doesn't mean it's gluten free.
Right.
It has to be
Yeah.
certified gluten free, and
Yeah.
just educating myself. And
Right.
it was hard at first, change, but now I know every restaurant in Lincoln where
Oh,
where I can get a cheeseburger that actually has a gluten free bun. And
okay.
your favorite restaurant, Chick Fil
Yeah.
A, Chick Fil
Yeah.
A has a gluten free bun, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
But they also
so
have grilled chicken, and that's my daughter's favorite. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's always on my mind. It's like, uh, I miss things like pizza. There's gluten-free frozen pizza, but it's okay. But no cookies. No, I mean, there's all the gluten-free stuff is more expensive.
It
Yeah.
is.
So it's like I don't even bother with it. I
Mhm.
just, so yeah. So Paige is away at college and she's doing okay there.
She is. Yeah. She's not far from us. She's only 45 minutes away. And
Okay.
so she comes home every weekend and sometimes a
Okay.
few times throughout the week. And so
Okay.
yeah, she's doing really well. I mean, she's doing animal husbandry. And so I
Uh-huh.
don't know exactly what that means, but she does. And so that's what matters.
Yeah.
And then she's also an RA and an ambassador and she's a tutor also this
Wow.
semester. So yeah, a
Awesome.
little bit of bragging rights.
There
I'm
you
excited
go.
for her.
That's
So
great. That's great.
yeah.
Yeah. And so you live out in West Nebraska,
Yeah.
and that's where they still use the stagecoach. Is that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. No, no, not at all.
Uh,
In fact, we have one of those smart cars,
oh
the
wow.
Cybertruck. Yeah, we have one of those,
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah, somebody
Yeah.
has one of those around here. So
Wow.
we're
Progress.
advancing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Um, so this weekend, I'm still getting over this whatever I had, and so I'm going to be just hang out at home today. But tomorrow I'm going to make it to church, which would be great.
Good.
How about your plans for the weekend?
Yeah. So, I'm going to run over to a neighbor's house and her mama goats just had babies,
Okay.
the little kid goats. And so I'm going to go and check those out and we're going to swap some soap for milk. So, because I
Okay.
make goat's milk soap. And so, um, anyways, I'm going to get milk from her. So we're going to trade
Okay.
and yeah.
So
So,
goat milk soap. You make that,
mhm.
right? Can you?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
made from the milk.
Yes.
So could you actually like eat the soap then?
No,
No.
no,
Okay. All right.
no,
Okay.
no.
Is is goat milk soap good for the skin?
Yeah, it's so good for the skin. Yeah. So because goat's milk has a high fat content, and
Uh-huh.
so it's really soothing and soft on the skin. Yeah,
Okay.
it's good. It's good.
And you sell that soap?
We do, yeah. Sometimes I'll jump in on like a vendor show, kind of like a craft show,
Uh-huh.
or yeah, believe it or not, we actually have a little farmers market in the summer here.
I
And
believe
so
it.
yeah, so I mean, even though it happens in the Goodwill parking lot, yeah, so I'll go there and I'll set up and sell soap there and a couple other
Okay.
things. So yeah,
Okay.
it's kind of fun.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good. That is
Hmm.
fun. I
Yeah.
think there's something about small town life that's just, special, I think, compared to city life. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's funny, and I didn't know that this kind of life was so near and dear to me until um, we moved out into the country, and then like I've just ate it all up, and I kind of try to do as much homesteading as I can,
Uh-huh.
and so I enjoy canning the goat's milk soap. I, we have a lavender bush, and I'll cut
Wow.
lavender, for bouquets and that kind of thing. Or we have our little garden, and then we have chickens. Our chickens are laying tons of eggs, too many eggs, which is a blessing because eggs are really expensive right now.
I know. I know. I know.
So, yeah,
Wow. That's good.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you're kind of like Little House on the Prairie type person.
A little bit, but memory, we've
Uh,
talked about my cooking before, and I haven't gotten any better in that area. So, in
okay.
fact,
Well,
I was trying to make homemade popcorn like 2 weekends ago. And so when you make homemade popcorn, you throw the little kernels in the pan of olive oil, and then
yeah.
you let it heat up. And once those pop, then you know to throw the rest in. Well, I stepped away for too long, and the little kernels, they popped, but they were burnt. I had burnt like black popcorn. And so I took the lid off, and there's just steam, just smoke rolling out. And so yeah, I had to take that pan outside and let it cool off.
Oh no. Wow.
Yeah, and the house stunk terribly. And so
Oh
yeah,
wow.
cooking's probably not my forte.
Yeah. Well,
So
I wasn't going to bring that up, but now that you did,
yeah, no.
I still think that I am the worst cook compared to the two of
No,
us.
I think I've got you beat.
I'm not sure about that. You know, the one time I was in France, I was doing a English language camp, outreach English language camp, and I put some microwave popcorn in the microwave, but all the words were in French, so I didn't know.
Oh.
And so
Oh.
I was trying to figure out like how to stop it, push stop. I couldn't figure it out. I finally just opened the door, but it was too late. And I opened the bag of popcorn, like this burnt popcorn, just the smell filled the whole room. And so I see you're drinking stuff. They have my coffee cup here.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay. All I need to do is a little bit of coffee and a whole lot of Jesus. Yeah,
Yeah.
amen.
So I'm actually having coffee. Are you having coffee or tea?
I am, yeah. And I've been drinking my coffee just black and then with heavy whipping cream. So I used to like probably put creamer in, like
Uh,
flavored creamer, and I probably had more flavored creamer than coffee. But then I don't know, I started kind of watching what I ate because I was a little bit of a glutton and I like sugar, cupcakes,
uh,
cookies, and all that kind of thing. And I did a book study last year. I actually went through the book like 3 times last year,
okay.
40 Day Sugar Fast. And it's a Christian author that's come up with this book. And she just brings to mind how important it is that we watch what we're ingesting and not
Yeah.
just on sugar, but just food in general and that kind of thing. Typically, um, a lot of the times we can stress eat or eat out of boredom,
Uh-huh.
or maybe, yeah, like, yeah, if we're stressed and then we just feel like we need something to go to, well, we should go to Jesus instead. And I wasn't always great about that. But anyways, and then I learned about coffee with heavy whipping cream, and it's just never been the same. It's just so
Okay.
good. And I would never drink flavored creamer in my coffee anymore. So
Okay.
there's that
What?
story.
I drink mine black completely. I don't put anything in.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I do sometimes, but I really like the heavy whipping cream.
Okay.
It's not sweet at all. I don't
Yeah.
know. Just,
I
it's good.
I call myself a coffee purist.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny. I call my husband a coffee connoisseur because that guy, oh my goodness, even if we're going on vacation, he packs up all of his coffee and his accessories and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay.
anyway,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, I laugh about you saying glutton because like how you're like so tiny. It's like I would never think of you as being a glutton. So
Oh, oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, and I think it's because a lot of it was the childhood trauma,
yeah.
just when you're dealing with things and you don't know to go to Jesus, then sometimes you go to things of this world, whether
Yeah.
that's food, addictions of this or that. I don't want to get
Yeah.
into that, but so
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah, I
yeah,
understand. Um, so well, I know that you have something to get to, right?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So,
so anyway, um, well, Alicia, I know you have an appointment to get to out there in the great wilderness, taking your covered wagon or stagecoach to go to your appointment. And
yeah.
so, but thank you for joining me today. Uh,
Yeah.
so, excuse me, I'm getting over this cold that I've had, but
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
with bronchitis, maybe. I don't know. Well,
Mhm.
anyway, but thank you so much for joining me today. It's good to see you again.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Get to feeling better too.
Oh, thank you. So next
Yeah,
time you come to Lincoln, let me know,
I will do that.
and
Yes.
I'll try to help you and your family experience something other than Chick-fil-A.
I know we're going to get spoiled now that we have it coming, just an hour from us. So,
Okay. All right.
yeah. So,
Okay. Well, God bless.
all right. Yes, you too. Take care.
Okay.
Get to feeling better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye.